everyone. You're listening to You Got It with Warrior Woman 91. And Theresa. All right. So, and also Ace, who's running around on the floor. And now
her name is Bunny.
Her name officially is Ace, but her nickname is Bunny, and we never call her Ace. So it's kind of like how Teresa's real name is Theresa, but nobody ever calls her that. Her name is Reese. So today we're going to discuss, and this is going to be a little bit different than our Star Trek episode, but we had so much fun doing the Star Trek episode, we decided to do a Star Wars episode, and this discussion is going to be a little bit more of a me interviewing Theresa format, because I have less opinions on this than I do on the Star Trek one, and Theresa has more information than I do on the situation. So basically what we're going to talk about is what the future of Star Wars looks like, given that the franchise is basically in shambles right now. The original cast is very unhappy with how things have turned out for their characters. The fandom, it's become a meme online, just how bad The Last Jedi was and how disappointed the fans were and the disastrous end of Luke Skywalker. And if you haven't seen it or seen any of the memes, I've already spoiled it for you. And there will be no more spoiler alerts in this show, so bear in mind, if you don't want to hear anything, then get out. And I don't know why you're listening to this episode if you haven't actually seen the movies anyway. So without further ado, Theresa, why don't you get us up to speed on what the situation with Star Wars is and where we are right now?
Deep breath. The situation with Star Wars is that Disney bought Star Wars from Lucasfilm. Obviously, Star Wars was the biggest franchise in the world, and of course they would make a lot of money off of this franchise. And they played it safe with J.J. Abrams in the first movie and basically didn't do anything new. They just stuck to almost a copy of A New Hope with The Force Awakens to make sure everyone was happy. Some people would prefer them to do a fresh story, but even though it was kind of a copy of The New Hope, no one was angry at The Force Awakens. And then came The Last Jedi by a different director named Rian Johnson. Ryan, or Ruin Johnson, as many people call him. He had a specific story he wanted to tell for this movie, and it's been said before, no one could tell him differently. He said he was trying to be subversive and trying to... And
if I could just interject, we've seen this play out with other directors as well, like Joss Whedon with Age of Ultron, but yes. Continue.
Rian Johnson officially stated that his dream for a movie would be to have both sides divided, like to have half people love it and half people hate it. He said that in like a 2013 interview or something. That's his dream, to be divisive, because, I don't know, he just likes it. Anyway... He did that. He had a certain narrative he wanted to do for the movie, and apparently behind the scenes, no one higher than him told him any differently. Kathleen Kennedy just let him do whatever he wanted, and he put in his own personal politics in the film, which have nothing to do with Star Wars, which were done very childishly. He completely uprooted the character of Luke Skywalker and turned him into a grumpy old man. He did this whiplash thing. There's rumors, and I think it's true, that the first draft of the script was used, and just the first draft, no revisions. I have to double check.
It just really seems odd to me, even if it's just a rumor. Why was there no pushback or anybody saying, "Hey, this might be a bad idea"? And I mean, that's kind of a rhetorical question because I can imagine why. But if you have any answers to it,
one of the speculations is that Rian Johnson knew his audience with Kathleen Kennedy. She is a very political person, and so he put in certain themes in the movie that would appeal to her.
So basically, the only member of his audience that he gave any thought to was the person in charge of Lucasfilms at the time.
That's the speculation. It seems accurate. She's a very political person, and has already tried to politicize Star Wars before Rian Johnson. Anyway, with her forces female shirts and so forth. Anyway, there was this whiplash thing with the characters, every character and the entire narrative of the movie. It's really a complicated movie to break down. But certain characters like Finn, who's supposed to be the main character, went nowhere. There's this very weird arc they try to give him about failure, even though, as Mahler, his critique on it pointed out, Finn doesn't really fail. He's just called out by a Nazi droid, and that's how he fails. Anyway, his whole arc ends. It's not really an arc. The character of Rose, who everyone hated, saves him. And it's getting hard to break down The Last Jedi because there's so much in it. Basically, there's no story to Star Wars anymore. We don't understand what the Empire is anymore, if it's the Empire or what the Rebels are. All of a sudden, the movie said that the Rebels have no resources, even though we saw them kind of on top of things in The Force Awakens. The characters don't make sense anymore because they had arcs that either didn't make sense or didn't go anywhere. And Rey does this thing throughout the movie where it seems like she's the good guy, the replacement for Luke one minute, and then it seems like she's the bad guy, and then it seems like she's the good guy again. And she's just, anything that happens with her is just to validate her as a Mary Sue character who can do anything and is always correct. So
I just want to interject there for a point that one of the issues I had with The Last Jedi. Well, I have two issues with some of the things you're talking about. One is what we already addressed about directors that don't have anybody pushing back or saying, hey, this might be a bad idea or whatnot. I don't think that that's ever a healthy situation for anybody, especially, just anybody, to have free reign to do something, to do whatever they want without somebody pushing back. Peter Jackson, to his credit, in Lord of the Rings, had Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens that he was bouncing stuff off of, and they were bouncing stuff off him, and back and forth, and that's why The Lord of the Rings was so successful. Those two women, I think, were responsible for a huge amount of the screenplay. And that's why I think that then you look at The Hobbit, it seems more like it was just a free-for-all with nobody saying, hey, this might be a bad idea, we're not really thinking long-term, is this going to hold up? So that's my first issue. My second issue is these tropes, the tropes with Rey. The tropes with Rey are so frustrating. And it is confusing because one minute it's like she's the young one who's trying to convince the old guy not to give up, and then on the other hand she's given up. So they can't really decide, but she's never in the wrong. She's never in the wrong. Everything that she does is completely perfect and right in every way. It's all very confusing, and the ending is really what...
I will say this about it. The overall thing about The Last Jedi is it wasn't just a bad movie. The prequels were bad movies. The Last Jedi killed the illusion of Star Wars. It either took things that made people care about Star Wars in the first place, like Luke Skywalker, and turned them into the opposite of what made them work, or did things that made absolutely no sense. Another giant thing about the movie is that it completely destroys the rules of the Force and just makes it able to do anything at this point. The Force Ghost can call lightning down to destroy trees, and you can project yourself across the galaxy.
Now
apparently.
Force Ghosts have power in the real world. That just seems odd because Obi-Wan never had power as a Force Ghost, and Yoda never had power as a Force Ghost. Nobody has ever had powers like this before. Nobody, some of the power, at the beginning of The Force Awakens, I was actually happy with kind of the look and feel of it. And when Kylo Ren stops the shot from the blaster and holds it in midair, that was kind of cool. And that was like, oh yeah, I mean, that's an interesting new thing that they're implying that the Force can do. It was merely
a new application of the Force.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything that... I mean, Obi-Wan specifically says in Empire Strikes Back, whatever happens, I cannot interfere. And now apparently the Force Ghosts can interfere, bringing down fire and brimstone into the real world.
With giggles and smiles all the way.
This is just going off of a bash fest, but Red Letter Media pointed out, a review site, that they made Yoda in the movie, which came in out of nowhere, more like the crazy deranged Yoda act he was only putting on as an act in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
He's not really like that.
No.
He was doing that just to test Luke's patience. He's really the composed, wise mentor.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is frustrating that they decided...
He's not a psychopath.
Yeah, they decided to make that his personality, and I don't know what for a joke. I don't know. It's very frustrating, but just to kind of get back to where
we didn't even touch on the jokes in the movie.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about that. More so, what I want to talk about on this episode is where are we now with Star Wars, and where can they go going forward? Because there's no way that they can repair Star Wars. What can they do to mitigate the damage? What are they offering to fans to try to mitigate the damage? Are they offering anything to fans?
Well, I need to speak on one thing when you're talking about real life stuff that's going on with the movie. What added insult to injury is it wasn't like Disney or Lucasfilm or Kathleen Kennedy or Rian Johnson or anyone saying, we messed up and we're going to try to fix it. It was them bashing the fans and accusing them
which is the best way to win people
entitled
over.
And accusing them of being, conflating people or even bots on the internet who might say terrible things with everybody who criticizes this person. This movie is awful and racist. And
which
sexist
makes no sense.
And homophobic and
how many different races did they have in the original Star Wars that everybody enjoyed? And even look at Samuel L. Jackson in the prequels was one of the most beloved characters of the prequel trilogy, even though the prequels weren't great.
Well, it's because people hate Rose Tico as a character, but she was an awfully written character and awfully placed in the movie. But since I think that was the final,
I think that here's my theory about her. I think that they knew that it was a corny, campy, awful character, and they cast a minority as a shield to say, yes, we know this was a bad character, but it doesn't matter because we're casting a minority as this character. So if you criticize her, then you're a racist, which. We might want to inform Harvard of that because they discriminate against Asians too, but...
Let's not get off track.
That's a side
What I was getting at was they added insult to injury. First, they made the worst movie they could have possibly made after having been warned by Mark Hamill, who was constantly arguing about it, and Carrie Fisher said some pretty cruel things about Rian Johnson, and they said they were jokes, but I'm wondering if they were... If she was being honest.
Oftentimes I've found that when people say jokes like that in real life, there's the
subtext.
The best jokes are the ones that are rooted partially in truth, and oftentimes when you hear people make so-called jokes like that in real life, I'm not saying all the time, but a lot of the times there is, as you said, subtext or behind-the-scenes stuff going on that humor allows people to vent those frustrations without getting them in trouble with their contracts.
Well, so continuing on, insult to injury, as I've said many, many times. So now Disney kind of just expects people to still love Star Wars and to still buy into everything. The big wake-up call for them, even though they didn't stop back their backlash against fans, was Solo, which was the first Star Wars movie to bomb. A complete financial failure coming right after The Last Jedi, which was such a shock. So it was then that
I don't know why it was a shock, because even if The Last Jedi had done well, I don't think Solo would have done well. I think it looked bad anyway.
Well, a lot of people, it killed the idea that people will go watch Star Wars for literally any reason multiple times. They didn't do that with this movie.
I mean, I just think that you have to be stupid to think that people will just watch something just because it has the name Star Wars on it. You can't just, I could make a movie about dog poop and then call it a Star Wars movie, and nobody's going to go... 5
Star Wars fans in the original days would watch it. So that's what woke the executives up a little bit, as well as the failure of their Galaxy's Edge attraction at Disneyland right now. But they're still really kind of railing against fans and any criticism they have. But the kind of thing is, Star Wars is such a famous trademark that Disney still wants to put it everywhere and put out so much content for it. So on Disney Plus, they have The Mandalorian, and they have this Obi-Wan Kenobi series coming out, and I'm gonna get back to that in a minute. Right now we just have The Rise of Skywalker, which is the worst title I've ever heard for any Star Wars movie.
Yeah, that's awful.
And what I'm hearing people say, I said this on my video I did, what I'm hearing people say is that they're confused of what Star Wars is even about right now. To watch, so that with that preview, you can't really speculate about what's going to happen because there are no rules anymore and there are no characters. You could just be anything.
Also, you watch the trailer and you see the new poster, and I'm like, yeah, the trailer looks cool. Yeah, the poster looks cool. Who are these characters here that I don't care about? We've spent 2 movies now not developing these characters. like, Kylo Ren probably is the most developed character, and I still don't care about him, but at least I care about him more than I care about any of the heroes. I don't care about any of these other characters because they're shallow and
they have no consistency.
They have no consistency, and they're just not appealing to me. They're also incredibly immature, and in a way that, like, one of the things that worked with the original Star Wars is Luke was the only immature character. You had Leia, who was very young, but like ahead, like older than the years that she'd actually lived, and then you had Han, who was very weathered as a human being, and then you had Luke, who was the teenage kid who was obnoxious. And that was a nice balance between the characters. But in this series, everybody's a teenager. And it's not... It's just not appealing to me, and I don't think it's appealing to most adults, and Star Wars originally was meant for adults.
Yes, I get a little tired of people saying, well, it's just a movie about space wizards for children, so it shouldn't have... one of the great tweets defending the sequels was, the nonsense is what makes it Star Wars. So all the...
Who said that?
Some guy who was trying to defend it.
That's embarrassing.
Anyway, the rise of Skywalker...
Let me ask this then. So what I'm hearing from you is we've got the directors who are basically against the fans, and we have Solo, which shook them up a little bit, but they still seem to have been in this kind of war between themselves and their own hubris, and the fans who I think the fans generally want to like Star Wars. I mean, I myself went into that movie and came out and was trying to make excuses for it and make myself feel better for a long time. And that's how I feel with a lot of movies that I want to like. I mean, I felt like that with the second Hobbit movie. And then there was just no way to feel like that with the third one. But fans want to like these things. They're not out to be against you, even if it's on a political ground. They're not necessarily out to get you, and yet the directors seem like they just aren't interested in making the fans come and see this. And so what my question is, are they going to learn from Solo, or are they going to just continue to double down and stick their fingers in everybody's eye and suffer the consequences at the box office?
I think there's kind of the outward approach that the directors like to take because of ego, and then the inward approach. Like, they don't want to admit they're wrong and have to deal with that, but behind the scenes they've seen reality that they are losing money off of this. So I think that they're going to try. They did this with Solo. They're going to try with a lot of fan service. This is why they're bringing Palpatine back. But they're so misguided. They don't understand what the fans want. Their intelligence on this situation goes as far as, well, this is a character a lot of people like. Bring them in, and then they'll like us.
Yeah, have a grand entrance for this character that everybody likes, with like a nice little soundtrack and a da-da-da, and when they come in, and then you'll automatically like it because that character is there. Even if that character has been manipulated and turned into somebody else that you don't like Luke Skywalker, you're just going to continue to like it because that character is there. I think it's a flaw within Disney itself, because I think that the weaknesses in Endgame, even though Avengers Endgame was a really good movie, it wasn't a great movie because they fall into this trap of, oh, well, if we do this for fan service, then people will like it, and it doesn't matter if the quality is there.
Well, I think Endgame's a bit of a different situation.
Well, we'll get into that.
We won't talk about Endgame here. Kevin Feige is very different than Kathleen Kennedy.
Move along.
Anywho. So, the Rise of Skywalker, they're going to try and pull out the stops with the fan service, but it's misguided fan service. They're giving Rey like a nunchuck lightsaber. It might be just a dream sequence, though.
A nunchuck lightsaber?
Did you not see that?
I did not see this.
Well, that's...
No, just explain.
She was seen in the trailer as looking like a Sith, and she's got this lightsaber that, like, basically is, like, two, like this, and then she...
Reese, it's audio. Nobody can see it.
I'm trying to explain to you. Anyway, she has 2 lightsabers in front of her. She presses a button and it deconstructs into like a nunchuck into this double-bladed lightsaber, and people are making fun of it. I mean, they wanted it to be all cool in the trailer, I'm sure, but people are making fun of it because of how ridiculous and impractical it is. Someone made a gif of it where she does the click thing to make it form into a double lightsaber, and they have it as a Swiss Army knife, and all these other things come out of it instead. And Mark Hamill retweeted this and was making fun of it with them. It's Mark Hamill, who is still in the movie and is still being paid by Disney, is joining in the ridicule this Star Wars franchise is getting.
I mean, good for him. I mean, Mark Hamill is a personally crappy human being, but I do enjoy that at least there's somebody behind the scenes who cares about Star Wars, that understands how disastrous this has been for Disney, and how they just really don't have anybody behind the scenes that cares about the franchise outside of how much money they can milk from it. And they're just going to destroy the franchise. They're going to bleed it dry until it's dead. They're going to then chop up the body parts and sell those. And then they're going to sell the blood. And then they're going to sell the toenails. And then finally, when they have nothing else, they'll sell, they'll find, like, the offspring of the dead.
They'll find something that looks like the toenails.
Yes.
Okay, I'll say this. I think The Rise of Skywalker is going to get some kind of box office because people like to see a train wreck. They want to. People want to get their reviews of. They want to scream about it and stuff. I don't think it's going to be a happy event everyone's going to go to.
Everybody's going to go to it for the reason. That's the only reason I'm going to it. I want to see how this franchise finally dies at the hands of Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams. And here's the sad thing for J.J. Abrams. I don't think The Force Awakens was a great movie, but I don't think it was a franchise killer, even though there were a lot of people disappointed with how Han Solo was dealt with. It was a Han Solo character killer, but it was not a franchise as a whole killer. The Last Jedi was.
He's so I want to getting stuck holding the bloody knife.
Yeah, that's the sad thing for J.J. Abrams. He's going to be the guy blamed for the downfall of Star Wars, even though it was clearly Rian Johnson's fault. So yes, he is what's his face from Psycho holding the knife at the end of the day.
Well, maybe J.J. Abrams has 2 personalities.
It's
One
Abrams.
is Rian Johnson.
It's not Abrams.
Abrams. Who cares?
Abrams.
Anyway, I don't think people are going to blame. I don't know, because some of the stuff they're teasing for this movie sounds like it's just as bad as The Last Jedi, but you're stuck in a universe that's confusing and doesn't make sense anymore. Now, the only way I see, if Disney, what they could do is they could retcon it and say, like, oh no, time travel, the sequels didn't happen, and then people wouldn't forgive Disney, though. Their Disney Plus shows actually, like, The Mandalorian is by Jon Favreau, and it looks like it's well shot, and it might be a well-made thing. Obi-Wan might be good if they're doing the story people wanted to hear with that.
What story is that? I'm not up to date.
It's after he leaves Luke and how he lives after that and how he...
Well, I figured that, but is there, like, anything else to that?
Well, they haven't announced more than that yet. Anyway... But the thing is, people might watch that. Some Star Wars fans might watch it.
I'll watch the first episode and then drop it, probably.
Some Star Wars fans might watch that and say, well, this was actually good, but you kind of killed...
It's too late because they've destroyed the main franchise. Like, it doesn't matter if they have a TV show that bombs or several TV shows or all the TV shows that bomb. That's not that's not a franchise-ending thing. You killed the main... Like, you killed the mothership of the little children.
Yeah, what I was going to say is there's no hype or joy around Star Wars anymore because of what they've done, and that's why they're lessening the franchise. The Lord of the Rings beat out Star Wars in a recent poll as the more loved franchise at this point. The MCU is proving a lot more... it's got so much more love for the franchise right now than Star Wars does, which is crazy because ever since before I was born, Star Wars was the biggest franchise in the world. Everyone watched Star Wars. Everyone loves Star Wars.
Star Wars is even bigger than Star Trek, and Star Trek has had a much longer run, and Star Wars is still the bigger franchise.
Yes, and it's just amazing that Disney has done this, and I think that their refusal to own up to any of it in any way is what has but ultimately put the final nail in the coffin of how it just can't be fixed at this point. I think that the originals will still be watched, but people just won't be as into it anymore.
No, it's not pleasant to go and see this movie. I'm not looking forward to it for the reason of, oh, I'm so excited to see the next Star Wars movie. I'm going to watch the franchise. The
franchise is dead, and we're watching its corpse go into the cremation.
Yeah, there's something like that. I would say that the franchise was dealt the fatal blow, and it's more like attending a funeral than anything. I'm saying goodbye to this franchise that has been destroyed. Now, let's play devil's advocate here. What is the argument you could make that The Last Jedi, or not The Last Jedi, The Rise of Skywalker could actually... I want you to get into J.J. Abrams' head and think about what you could do to save this. How do you bring this back?
If they have Rey wake up in the beginning and it's the end of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi was a bad dream, if they have them retcon, like time travel and just retcon it and tell people this doesn't happen anymore, I don't think that The Rise of Skywalker is where it can be fixed at all. I think if it can be fixed anywhere, it's in the streaming shows because they're completely separate from this, the sequel trilogy continuity and what they were trying to do there, and those characters that are there.
I don't see a lot of people watching the streaming shows. I mean, I see the people that are getting Disney Plus and just happen to have it on there being able to watch it. But I don't see people flocking to the Disney shows and being able to recreate the love of Star Wars that was garnered by the movies. That's never going to be able to be recovered, and that's why the only way to recover it would be in the movies in some capacity. Now, I disagree. I do not think that you can fix it by time travel. I don't think you can fix it by retcon. I don't think you can fix it in that way. The only way to fix it is to go through what you just set up and make it appealing in the end. And I don't know how you can do that other than making Luke come back in some way. Like, Luke didn't really die, he just collapsed, or I don't know. You'd have to do something to correct the wrongs done without using the campy, stupid, overdone now 100,000 times time travel or
I was really just joking with that. My whole thing is I feel like this sequel trilogy can't exist if you're supposed to fix Star Wars, because you're still going to have Luke, who became a grumpy old man, even though that's something he would never do, and that's a complete 180 of what made people connect with his character.
Yes.
If you ever get someone... I'd say the only way you can ever fix Star Wars is if you get someone who loves Star Wars to come in and continue doing Star Wars, someone who cares about what the fans think and what the fans want, and someone who cares about the characters and the atmosphere and the themes of Star Wars themselves. Right now we don't have that. It's all just kind of from a cynical corporation that just is concerned using this for money, and now they've kind of realized they made a mistake with that, and they're trying to get more money, see how they can salvage it money-wise, because that seems to be all Disney really responds to.
I mean, I don't think it's all that everybody at Disney responds to, but it certainly is the wing that's in charge of Star Wars is only about milking it for all it's worth. And I think, I don't know, it's just very frustrating to see how many people have just been so disappointed with this movie, and only to be met with, oh, well, you're just racist, or you just don't understand the deeper meaning of what we were trying to do. No, we know what you were trying to do. You were trying to make money, and you're too prideful to admit that your ideas that you thought would make money are not doing well.
Well, I think with these directors, it all comes back to ego, because first they're egotistical in that they have to have their message be the one that comes through, and their version and the kind of things they want to portray, and then they can't admit, they don't want to ever be seen as wrong afterwards. They don't want, everyone else is wrong for not letting them do whatever they want, and so that's how we get the Joss Whedons and Rian Johnsons of the world.
So, one of my questions, and my final question really, is where do you think Star Wars goes after the Rise of Skywalker bombs?
I think that would be the ultimate humbling blow for Disney to realize that, The Last Jedi did kill Star Wars. Oops.
I mean, my other question would be, do you think that in 30 years somebody comes back and makes another trilogy of Star Wars with all new characters and doesn't reference these other ones, doesn't have to do really with anything? Do you think that they could make appealing characters again within the Star Wars universe?
Yes, I think they can. I think they say that the books and stuff like that is canon. I think they don't go to Luke and Han and all that. I think they tell stories with new characters far in the future, but in the same universe as Star Wars. I don't think people will ever trust having a character like Luke or Han Solo come back after Solo and The Last Jedi. Maybe they will. I'm just putting that out there.
I do think this sequel trilogy is the biggest disappointment for one other big reason: the fact that this was the last time that they were going to have these 80 and 70-year-old characters be able to be in the movies and played by the actors that originally played them, because as we all know, Carrie Fisher died before The Last Jedi even came out. So it is very disappointing that this was a once in a, not even once in a lifetime, this was a once in a world time opportunity to get these people to do these characters that are so beloved, and they just flushed it down the toilet and for a couple of dollars, and it's very disappointing. And I'm sorry that this episode is a little more of a downer, but that's just the way Star Wars is going.
Star Wars is. It's like talking about a dead relative.
Yeah.
But I think that the Rise of Skywalker, underperforming or bombing or being hated, it's going to be a wake-up call for Disney. Oh, it did kill Star Wars, and I think that the fans, however, are going to live on and continue to discuss how bad these movies were, because they still do that with The Last Jedi. So, but hopefully the Disney nightmare will be over. I mean, they'll still try to do those streaming shows. I'm not sure how much and how prominent they'll make them, though.
Yeah, those aren't... I mean, I'm not saying they're going to do poorly, but they're not going to be... They're going to be Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. level, maybe a little better quality, maybe a little better storytelling, but they're not going to be anything that people are writing home about. I mean, their Clone Wars series, while it's an okay series, it's not a great series. It's not a series to get really excited about. So... Anyway, that's the evaluation of Star Wars. I appreciate everybody who's been listening to the last couple of episodes. I hope you guys enjoyed last week's episodes with Donovan talking about the top 10 movies that you should see during your lifetime. I really enjoyed that episode, and I hope to have Donovan back, and I hope to have a more positive episode with Theresa coming forward. But... until then, did you want to shout out your...
Twitter is @Theresa Campagna. Name is Jester Bell. And on Instagram, it is Jester_Bell. Follow me for my opinions on movies and some of my artwork.
What about YouTube, which is kind
of... And on YouTube, it's just Jester Bell, capital J, capital B. I do my various thoughts on there.
All right. So, without further ado, thank you guys for listening, and I will talk to you guys on the next episode.